I never thought I'd be writing this, but I need to get it out there because what happened at that diner still haunts me every single night. It was 3 months ago during that massive fuel shortage that hit the whole country. I'm a long-haul trucker, been doing this for 15 years, and I've seen my share of weird stuff on the road, but nothing like what went down at Clara's place in rural Nebraska. I was running on fumes, literally, when I spotted her little roadside diner with the old-fashioned fuel pumps out front. The hand-painted sign read, "Clara's Stop and Go," and there were maybe 6 or 7 other big rigs already parked there. I remember thinking it was my lucky day because most stations had been bone dry for weeks. The whole country was in chaos. People fighting over gas, prices through the roof, and here was this little oasis in the middle of nowhere. I pulled up to the pump, expecting to pay whatever crazy price she was asking, but when I walked into that diner, Clara, a woman probably in her 60s with graying hair and kind eyes, told me something that should have been a blessing, but turned into the worst nightmare of my life. "Honey, I'm giving it away for free," she said with this warm smile that seemed genuine at the time. "Times are tough for everyone, and you drivers are keeping this country moving. Fill up your tank, no charge." I couldn't believe it. Here was this woman, probably struggling to keep her own business afloat, and she was just giving away fuel like it was water. The other truckers in the diner were all talking about her generosity, how she'd been doing this for days, helping anyone who came through. Some of them had been stuck there for a while. She was feeding them too, letting them sleep in their cabs in her parking lot. It felt like finding an angel in the middle of hell, you know? But looking back now, I realize that's exactly what she wanted us to think. The way she moved around that diner, refilling coffee cups and chatting with everyone, it was almost too perfect. Too caring, too generous for someone who should have been worried about her own survival. And there was something else that bothered me even then, though I couldn't put my finger on it. The other truckers who'd been there longer, they had this weird look in their eyes when they talked about Clara. Not gratitude exactly, but something else. Something that made my skin crawl when I really think about it now. Clara kept insisting we stay the night, said it wasn't safe to drive in the dark with all the chaos on the highways. "You boys need your rest," she'd say, bringing us more coffee, and homemade pie that tasted incredible. The diner had this cozy, old-timey feel with checkered tablecloths and vintage truck photos on the walls. But as the evening wore on, I started noticing things that didn't sit right. For one, there were way more trucks in the parking lot than I'd initially counted. I could see them from the window, at least 20 rigs, maybe more, all lined up like they were at some kind of convention. When I asked one of the other drivers about it, he just stared at me for a long moment before saying, "They've been here a while." His voice was flat, emotionless, and when I pressed him about how long exactly, he couldn't seem to remember. That's when I noticed that none of the truckers were using their phones. In a crisis like this, every driver should have been calling dispatch, checking in with family, trying to figure out their next moves. But everyone just sat there eating Clara's food and drinking her coffee with these blank, satisfied expressions on their faces. The fuel situation was even weirder when I really thought about it. Clara claimed she was giving away her emergency reserves, but I'd been in this business long enough to know that a small operation like hers shouldn't have had enough fuel to supply dozens of trucks for days on end. Where was it all coming from? And why wasn't she worried about running out? When I walked around back to use the restroom, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were more fuel tanks buried behind the building than any roadside diner would ever need, and they looked fresh, like they'd been installed recently. The ground around them was disturbed, and there was this sweet, chemical smell in the air that reminded me of something I couldn't quite place. But what really got to me was the way Clara watched everyone from behind the counter. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes followed every movement, tracking each trucker like she was keeping inventory. When I caught her staring at me, she'd just nod and ask if I needed anything else, but there was something predatory about it, something that made every instinct I had scream that I needed to get out of there, fuel or no fuel. I tried to leave around midnight, told Clara I had to make a delivery by morning, but she got this concerned look on her face and insisted it was too dangerous. "The roads are full of desperate people," she said, her hand resting on my arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "Stay until dawn, please. I'd never forgive myself if something happened to you." The other truckers nodded in agreement, but their movements were sluggish, almost robotic. One guy I'd been talking to earlier, Big Jim from Texas, seemed to have forgotten our entire conversation. When I brought up what we'd discussed about the fuel shortage, he just stared at me blankly and said, "What fuel shortage?" Like he genuinely had no idea what I was talking about. That's when I noticed that several of the truckers looked like they hadn't changed clothes in days, maybe weeks. Their uniforms were wrinkled and stained, but they didn't seem to care or even notice. The whole scene felt like I was watching people sleepwalk through their lives, and Clara was the only one who seemed fully awake and aware. I pretended to go along with staying the night, but around 3 a.m. I snuck out to my truck. The parking lot was dead silent, except for the hum of all those idling engines. Truckers never shut off their rigs for long, but this was different. Every single truck was running, like they were ready to move at a moment's notice, but nobody was going anywhere. As I walked toward my cab, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Some of the trucks had been there so long that weeds were growing up around the tires. Actual weeds, like they'd been parked in the same spots for months. And the license plates, Jesus, the license plates were from all over the country, but they were covered in dust and grime, like they'd been sitting there through multiple seasons. I started checking the registration stickers on the windshields, and my hands were shaking when I realized some of them had expired over a year ago. These trucks, these drivers, they'd been here way longer than the fuel shortage had been going, on way longer than any of them seemed to remember. I heard footsteps behind me and spun around to see Clara standing there in her apron, smiling that same warm smile, but in the dim light of the parking lot, it looked different, hungry. "Couldn't sleep, honey?" she asked, but her voice had this sing-song quality that hadn't been there during the day. "It's not safe out here in the dark. Come back inside where it's warm." I mumbled something about checking on my load, but she just kept walking closer, and I swear the temperature dropped about 10 degrees. That's when I noticed her shadow in the security light. It was wrong somehow, too long and twisted, like it belonged to something much taller and thinner than the kindly old woman standing in front of me. She reached out to touch my arm again, and her fingers felt ice cold even through my jacket. "You know, you remind me of another driver who came through here last winter," she said, her head tilting at an unnatural angle. "Nice young man like yourself, always worried about making his deliveries on time. He learned to relax eventually. They all do." The way she said it made my skin crawl, and when I looked back toward the diner, I could see faces pressed against the windows, all the other truckers watching us, but their expressions were completely blank, like they were watching a TV show instead of a real conversation happening right outside. I told her I really needed to get going, that my dispatcher would be worried, but Clara just laughed, this low, throaty sound that didn't match her appearance at all. "Oh, sweetheart, nobody's looking for any of you anymore? Haven't you figured that out yet?" That's when it hit me like a freight train. The fuel shortage, the crisis, the chaos on the highways. What if it wasn't real? What if it was just something she convinced us was happening to keep us here? I pulled out my phone to call my dispatcher, but there was no signal, not even one bar, which was impossible because I'd had full service when I first arrived. Clara was still smiling, but now I could see that her teeth were too sharp, too white, like they'd been filed to points. "The fuel I've been giving you isn't exactly what you think it is," she whispered, and suddenly that sweet chemical smell from earlier made sense. It wasn't fuel additive or cleaning solution. It was something organic, something that smelled like decay, masked with artificial sweetness. It changes you, makes you content, makes you want to stay. Most of the boys figured it out eventually, but by then it was too late. The hunger sets in after a few days, and then you don't want to leave anymore. You just want to help me find more drivers, more friends to join our little family. I backed away from her, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. But Clara just kept advancing with that horrible smile stretching wider across her face. "Don't be scared, honey. It doesn't hurt much, and afterwards you'll feel so much better, so much more relaxed." Behind her, I could see the other truckers starting to file out of the diner, moving in that same slow, robotic way. Big Jim was in the front, and in the security light I could see that his skin had this grayish tint to it, like he'd been sick for weeks. His eyes were completely black, no white showing at all, and when he opened his mouth I saw the same sharp teeth that Clara had. "He's trying to leave," Clara called out to them, her voice changing completely, deeper, raspier, like it was coming from somewhere else entirely. "We can't let him do that. He knows too much now." The truckers started, surrounding my rig, but they moved wrong, too fluid, like their joints bent in directions they shouldn't. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so bad I could barely get them in the ignition, and that's when I noticed something that made me want to vomit. The fuel gauge on my dashboard wasn't showing diesel. There was this thick, dark liquid sloshing around in there, and it was moving on its own, pulsing like a heartbeat. I gunned the engine and floored it, not caring if I ran over any of them. But as my truck lurched forward, I heard this sound that still gives me nightmares. It was like 1,000 voices screaming at once, but underneath it was Clara's laughter, echoing from everywhere at the same time. In my side mirrors, I could see the other trucks starting up, their headlights cutting through the darkness as they began to follow me. But here's the thing that really messed me up. Some of those trucks were the exact same model and color as mine. Same company logos, same everything, like they were copies. I pushed my rig as hard as it would go, and for a while I thought I'd lost them. But then I started noticing other things. My CB radio was picking up chatter, but it was my own voice coming through the speakers, having conversations I'd never had with dispatchers I'd never talked to. The GPS kept trying to reroute me back to Clara's place, showing it as my home address, even though I'd never programmed it that way. And the fuel, God, the fuel was lasting way too long. I should have been empty hours ago, but that black liquid just kept flowing, kept feeding my engine, and I could feel it changing me from the inside out. My vision was getting sharper, but colors were starting to look different, muted except for red, which seemed to glow everywhere I looked. I drove for 3 days straight, afraid to stop anywhere, afraid to sleep. But the thing inside my fuel tank kept me going even when I should have collapsed from exhaustion. My body felt different, stronger but wrong, like something was rewiring my insides. I kept trying to call for help, but every number I dialed connected me to Clara's diner. Her voice would come through the phone, sweet as pie, asking when I was coming home. "You can't run forever, honey," she'd say. "That fuel will bring you back to me eventually. It always does." I finally pulled into a truck stop in Colorado, desperate to drain my tank and fill it with real diesel. But when the attendant tried to pump the fuel out, it wouldn't come. The hose just sucked air, like the tank was empty, but my gauge still showed full. The mechanic said he'd never seen anything like it, that it was like the fuel had bonded with the metal somehow. That night, parked at the truck stop, I started having the dreams. I was back at Clara's diner, but this time I could see what it really was underneath the illusion. The building was rotting, falling apart, and the parking lot was full of rusted truck frames with no engines, like metal skeletons. Clara wasn't human at all. She was something ancient and hungry, feeding off the life force of anyone stupid. Enough to accept her generosity. The dreams got worse each night, more vivid, more real. I'd wake up with the taste of that chemical sweetness in my mouth and black liquid under my fingernails. My dispatcher started calling, saying I'd missed deliveries I didn't even remember scheduling, and when I tried to explain what happened, my words came out wrong. Instead of telling him about Clara, I heard myself recommending her diner, giving him directions, telling him about the free fuel. I was becoming one of them, one of her recruiters, and I couldn't stop it. The worst part was that it felt good. The hunger was setting in, just like she'd promised, but it wasn't for food. It was for bringing other drivers to her. I'd find myself taking routes that passed by truck stops, scanning the CB channels for drivers who sounded desperate, drivers who were running low on fuel. Part of me wanted to warn them, but a bigger part wanted to tell them about this amazing place in Nebraska where a kind woman was helping truckers for free. I fought it for weeks, taking loads that kept me on the West Coast, as far from Nebraska as possible, but the dreams kept pulling me back. In them, I could see the other truckers, my family as Clara called us, and they were happy, content. They'd stopped fighting, stopped trying to leave, and they spent their days maintaining their trucks and helping Clara find new drivers to join them. The breaking point came when I was hauling a load through Wyoming and saw a trucker broken down on the side of the highway. His name was Mike, young guy, maybe his first year on the road, and his fuel gauge was sitting on empty. I pulled over to help, telling myself I was just being a good Samaritan, but when I opened my mouth, Clara's words came out instead of mine. "There's a place I know in Nebraska," I heard myself saying. "Real nice lady runs a diner there. She's been helping drivers during this shortage, giving away fuel for free." Mike's eyes lit up with hope, and I gave him detailed directions, even drew him a little map on a napkin. As I watched him drive away toward Clara's trap, I felt this wave of satisfaction that wasn't my own, like something inside me was feeding off his gratitude. That's when I realized I was completely lost. The thing in my fuel tank, whatever Clara had put there, it was using me as bait now. I was her hunting dog, leading innocent drivers straight to her web. And the worst part was how good it felt every time I did it. I tried to kill myself 3 times over the next month. Drove my truck toward a bridge abutment, but at the last second my hands would jerk the wheel away, like they weren't under my control anymore. Tried to drain the fuel tank with a siphon, but the black liquid burned through the hose and left chemical. Burns on my hands that healed too fast, leaving no scars. Even tried to just abandon the truck and walk away, but I'd black out and wake up behind the wheel, driving toward another truck stop to find more victims for Clara. The thing inside me was getting stronger, and I was getting weaker. My reflection in the mirror started showing those same black eyes I'd seen on the other truckers, and my teeth were getting sharper. Food tasted like cardboard, but the thought of fresh drivers, new meat for Clara's collection, made my mouth water. I knew I was running out of time before I became just another one of her puppets, smiling and waving at passing truckers, luring them in with promises of free fuel and a warm meal. The last shred of my real self was screaming for help, but nobody could hear it over Clara's voice coming through my vocal cords. The final time I tried to resist, I was parked at a rest stop in Kansas when I saw a family in an RV running on fumes. Kids crying in the back seat because they were scared about not making it to their destination. The father was checking his phone, probably looking for the nearest gas station, and I could feel Clara's influence washing over me like a tide. My mouth opened without my permission, and I started walking toward them with that same helpful smile I'd seen on Big Jim's face back at the diner. "Excuse me, folks," I heard myself saying. "I couldn't help but notice you might be running low on fuel." The man looked relieved to see another traveler willing to help, and I felt sick watching his face light up with hope. But even knowing what I was about to do, even fighting it with every fiber of my being, I couldn't stop the words from coming. I told them about Clara's place, about the free fuel, about what a saint she was for helping people during these hard times. I drew them a map, gave them my CB channel in case they needed directions, and watched them drive away towards certain doom. After they left, I sat in my cab and cried for the first time since I was a kid, but even my tears felt wrong, too thick, too dark, like the black liquid was seeping out of every part of me. That was 6 weeks ago, and I know my time is almost up. I can feel myself slipping away more each day, Clara's voice getting louder in my head while my own thoughts get quieter. I've lured maybe 30 trucks to her diner since that first family, and each time it gets easier, feels more natural. The hunger is constant now, gnawing at me when I'm not actively hunting for her, and I've started having dreams where I'm not the victim anymore. I'm helping her, standing behind the counter with that same warm smile, offering free fuel to desperate drivers who think they've found salvation. My skin is getting that grayish tint I saw on the others, and yesterday I caught myself humming a song I'd never heard before, something that sounded like it was coming from underground. I'm writing this at a truck stop in Missouri, and I can see 3 other drivers who look like they're running low on fuel. Part of me wants to warn them, to tell them to stay away from Nebraska, to never trust anyone offering free fuel during a crisis. But a bigger part, the part that's growing stronger every day, wants to walk over there and start a conversation about this amazing little diner I know. I've been fighting the urge to approach those drivers for 2 hours now, and my hands are shaking so bad I can barely type this. The black stuff is literally oozing out from under my fingernails, and when I look in the mirror, I can see my reflection is starting to flicker. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's this thing with Clara's smile and those shark teeth. I tried calling the cops, tried calling the FBI, tried calling anyone who would listen, but every number connects me back to that diner. Clara's voice comes through the phone, patient and loving, telling me to stop fighting and come home where I belong. "You've done such good work for me, honey," she says, "brought me so many new friends. But you're getting tired, aren't you? Tired of fighting what you really are now." And the horrible thing is, she's right. I am tired. Tired of fighting this thing inside me. Tired of pretending I'm still human when I can feel myself changing into something else entirely. The hunger is so strong now that I'm salivating, just thinking about those 3 drivers, imagining their grateful faces when I tell them about the free fuel, picturing them joining our family at Clara's place. The worst part is that I can remember exactly how many drivers I've sent to her now. 37 trucks, 81 people total, including passengers. I can see their faces when I close my eyes, remember their names, their stories, their last moments of hope before they drove into Clara's web. And I'm proud of it. That's what scares me the most. I'm actually proud of how good I've gotten at this, how easily I can spot desperate drivers and know exactly what to say to convince them. I've become her perfect recruiter, and soon I won't even remember why I thought that was wrong. I can feel my old self dissolving like sugar in water, getting thinner and sweeter until there's nothing left but Clara's will and this endless hunger for more victims. Right now, as I'm typing this, I can see one of those drivers walking toward the restroom, and my body wants to get up and follow him, strike up a casual conversation about fuel prices, work my way around to mentioning this great little place I know. My legs are already moving, pushing me up from this booth, and I don't think I can stop them this time. If someone finds this message, please understand that by the time you read it, I won't be me anymore. I'm posting this to every trucking forum I can access, hoping someone will believe it and stay away from rural Nebraska. Don't trust any diner that offers free fuel. Don't trust any trucker who seems too eager to help you with directions. And whatever you do, don't believe that there's still a nationwide fuel shortage going on. I checked the news sites during a brief moment of clarity yesterday, and the shortage ended 2 months ago. It was only supposed to last a few weeks, but Clara's been keeping us trapped in this bubble where we still think it's happening. She feeds off crisis, off desperation, and she creates the very conditions that bring victims to her door. I can see the dates on my phone, see that it's been almost 4 months since I first stopped at her place, but my mind keeps telling me it was just a few days ago. Time works differently there, or maybe she makes us forget how long we've really been gone. I've been fighting to write this warning, but I can feel Clara's presence getting stronger, whispering in my ear that I should delete it all and go recruit those drivers instead. My vision is going now, everything turning grey, except for the bright red heat signatures of living people. I can smell their fuel tanks from here, sense how desperate they are, and it's making my mouth water. I tried to end this by driving my truck into a lake last week, but I woke up dry and unharmed in Clara's parking lot, with her standing over me, stroking my hair like I was a sick child. "You can't leave us, honey," she said. "You're family now, forever and always." Some of the other truckers were there too, the ones who'd been missing for years, and they all had that same peaceful expression. They weren't suffering anymore, weren't fighting it, they'd just accepted what they'd become. And God help me, it looked so easy, so restful. I'm losing pieces of myself every day, forgetting why I ever wanted to resist in the first place. The man I used to be is screaming somewhere deep inside, but his voice is getting fainter while Clara's gets louder. I think I'm going to stop fighting soon. I think I'm ready to go home to Nebraska and take my place behind the counter, helping Clara welcome new drivers to our family. I think I'm ready to smile that warm, helpful smile and offer free fuel to anyone desperate enough to believe in miracles during dark times.